people can learn so much from hearing us speak up because I think from my own experience and what I've seen over time, queer people have had to hide. They've had to kind of shape shift. They've had to mask. They've had to, stay away from people. They've had to, stay alone. They maybe have struggled with finding opportunities for marriage or relationships. So I think it's giving people an opportunity to really like come forward and be vulnerable and open up and share with the world what it's like. We've had to keep our mouth shut for so long.
That was Kyle May, owner of Open Doors Counseling. I'm Buddy Forbes, and this is Queerly Quilted. So really, it starts with talking about your story, about your growing up in Appalachia and what that was like for you.
I was born and raised in Pikeville, Kentucky. I lived there for several years, and I was raised in a conservative Christian home. I was raised in multiple churches, and most of the messages, if not all of the messages that I heard about being gay, had to do with it being a sin, that, people who are gay are bad, they're going to hell. I heard other messages like, because you're gay, you're going to end up with AIDS and you're going to die from that. I've heard over the years many people try to associate being gay with being a pedophile, or that in not only the community, but like even in certain workspaces that had been discussed before. And I ended up going to Morehead State University for my bachelor's degree, and I spent about 4 years there. I hadn't come out yet, so I came out in, I think it was around the halfway point in college, so close to junior year. And that's when I was really able to start to thrive and become more in alignment with who I am. I found a lot more support at the time, other LGBTQ people. And then I eventually moved back to Eastern Kentucky, where I started my career in as a therapist. And I was able to find more allies in the area for several years. I built, I call it my bubble. I was around a lot of very safe people for the area and progressive allies. But at the time, it was not enough. I really value those friendships and we still talk and stuff. But what I was missing was community. And that's what I had found at Morehead State University whenever I was going to college there. I did find a community of other LGBTQ people. Many of them were also from parts of Eastern Kentucky or rural Kentucky. And we shared that experience. So we understood each other, knew where we were coming from. And that's what I was missing when I had moved back to Eastern Kentucky around my hometown, was community, an LGBTQ community. So while I was there, I did work towards starting the Big Sandy LGBT plus safe zone, which was forming around the same time that Pikeville Pride got started. And we didn't know each other at the time. So I'm really grateful to be able to see what has changed and how the community has evolved in Eastern Kentucky since that was around 2017 or 18 when all of those resources started to form. They eventually were able to merge and, grow together. But I really enjoy being able to look back and see the progress and the growth. And now that, you know, people have been able to find one another in Appalachia, they, I think, are starting to realize that there are more people around who are either LGBTQ or allies, people who are more progressive, more open-minded.
But for you, kind of, it sounds like you had to create your own community elsewhere before you could really cultivate who you were as a human.
Hmm.
When you look now at Appalachia, and you kind of already mentioned Pikeville Pride, the safe zone, when you see these things, did you ever imagine those would exist in this region?
No, before those started forming and coming together, part of the thought processes I was having was like, I kept thinking, I really wish that this area had some resources. I really wish that we had a Pride that wasn't 2 or 3 hours away. I wish that we had, um, a hub of resources that were LGBTQ friendly or affirming or specific to the community. And I would catch myself often saying, someone needs to do this, someone needs to create this, someone needs to bring this here. Well, eventually I thought about it long enough and talked about it with enough people in my bubble that I started to realize that I could do that. I could form a nonprofit. I could bring a board together. I could, when I found out about Pikeville Pride, I could help with organizing a Pride festival, you know. And even though I did see the community forming at the time, I think it had been too long for me. Like I had already just decided, like, I don't want to wait and see. I don't want to wait around and hope. So I ended up moving to Lexington to find I guess, a more developed, more thriving LGBTQ community. But I do miss Eastern Kentucky. There are times when I would like to be able to move back and, take part and participate in the community that is there because there's been a lot of hard work that has went into building that community, and there's been a lot of people involved in helping that grow and cultivating that safe space for people. But I am very grateful to have moved here and been able to start my practice, Open Doors Counseling Center, where we specialize with LGBTQ people and we see clients from all over the state. And we have been able to pivot and kind of like go back to Eastern Kentucky after having built the main office here in Lexington to be able to continue to support the area and the work that's happening with growing and cultivating a thriving LGBTQ community in Appalachia.
So, going back a little bit to your upbringing and being in Appalachia during that time, did you have any people on your radar, anyone in the region that you could look to and say, that's a voice like mine?
So at the time, I was a very sheltered kid. I didn't have a lot of friends that I would hang out with outside of school or outside of church or even at school. I think I stayed to myself a lot because I was dealing with that inner battle. The other LGBTQ people that I knew of, I'm going to say gay because at the time back then I did not know any other people other than maybe a gay person. Like the acronym and the understanding of every identity has expanded since then, but at the time, at that age, I might have only known someone who was gay.
Right.
So, but back then, my peers who were gay were ridiculed. They were mistreated. They were, talked badly about, mistreated by peers. So I didn't really ever get close to them, because I was dealing with my own stuff. And I kind of just stayed to myself anyway. Most of the my high school years. That's when I started realizing I was gay, and when I was in eighth grade. So most of my high school years was spent, dealing with that and battling with that in my head to myself because I didn't have anyone to talk to. And then the only other person I could think of that I knew was gay at the time was my uncle, and the family was always putting him down and talking badly about him. And we didn't really have a strong relationship either. They kept us from him. And anyone else I knew that was gay was pretty siloed to themselves, trying to hide. So no, I don't think I knew anyone back then who was living a full, authentic expression of who they are. I think they were having to hide and survive.
So now, when you look at I won't say massive growth because there's obviously a lot of work to do in many situations. You know that as your practice was in Prestonsburg, which we can talk about if you want to or not. But seeing that growth and seeing more safe spaces and being a part of helping to bring those to the region, when you walked down the street of Pikeville during the last Pride event, thousands of people were filling the streets. Did you ever imagine a world in which that would happen here in Pikeville?
Not while I was growing up there. I never imagined anything different other than what was already in place, which was Louisville, Lexington, Cincinnati, big cities. Um, it wasn't until fairly recently that smaller towns started having prides. So when Pikeville announced that they were going to have a pride, I was like, "We're there. We're going to be there for sure. We're going to help with this." And we have every year since. We've always either tabled or sponsored or a mixture of both or whatever we can do to help. And we've dedicated Pikeville as one of our annual Pride festivals that we go to support. Because we try to pick only a few because there's so many now. But um, there's just so much positive that can come from Pride and other resources in Eastern Kentucky and Appalachia because so many people feel alone and isolated. They don't know anyone else like them. So being able to see and hear other representation really helps give someone hope that they too can someday be who they are and live authentically and work toward having a positive future where they can feel secure and happy.
So if you were to go back and have a conversation with young Kyle, what would that be like now?
Well, I would sit down with myself and say, you're going to be able to do great things. You're going to turn your pain into passion and you're going to, overcome a lot of adversity. You're going to become a leader uh, for the LGBTQ community, and you're going to inspire others to step up too. I remember when I moved to Lexington, the people who were involved with either Pride or the Big City Safe Zone, I don't want to speak for them, but I felt like they were kind of hesitant to step up. I think they were anxious about that for different reasons. They might have better insight into that, but I did encourage them to give it a try. Step up. You can do this. You can be a leader. You can learn what you need to learn to run a nonprofit, or you can learn what you need to learn to be a leader in this organization or this area. And I'm grateful that they did step up because the Big City Safe Zone could have easily just dissolved after one cycle of a president. I was there longer than my term because of COVID. I stayed until that was over or over-ish. I held on to it for a few years and finally I was like, someone needs to do this. Someone needs to step up and give it a try. And they've really done a good job with it ever since. So I'm glad that they were able to do that because I needed to move on and do this and do other things. But it takes a community, to step up and to lead and to honestly help heal the community around us, the others that need our help and support. Like we've been able to support one another through this journey, and now we're able to help more people because others have stepped up and gotten the confidence to be able to do that. And so it's great to be able to see that. And so, with my younger self, I would say, hang in there. You got this. You're going to be able to find happiness. You're going to be able to fully express who you are. You're going to be able to feel safe doing that. You're going to be able to inspire others to do the same. And, it's going to be really great for not just you personally, but like everyone around you who sees that being modeled and that it is possible.
Now, when I say queer Appalachia, what does that mean to you?
Well, to me, I mean, when I think of that, I think of people who, I mean, I might be stretching it, but I would even think people who are othered in a multitude of ways. Like not just someone who identifies as LGBTQ. I think that is definitely the point, but I also know just from experience with working in Prestonsburg when we had that location and now Pikeville, we received a lot of clients who just feel othered and ostracized and left out because of who they are or what they've done in life or decisions they've made, hard decisions they've had to make. Or just, I could list a million reasons, but they are also left out and mistreated.
I think you're right there. I mean, that's kind of the plight of Appalachia, right? Being pushed aside, left out, looked down upon. And I think the more people realize that we're not just highlighting queer voices, but integrating and saying these people are here, they've always been here, they're your neighbors. We're all just alike in so many different ways. So I think that's really one of the things that I want to do with this podcast is share that, you know, in as many ways as we differ, we're also very much the same. So I like what you said there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do think that, amplifying the voices of LGBTQ people, queer people, I think that is a very important uh, project that you're working on, because, I think all of us have stories to share. And I think people can learn so much from hearing us speak up because I think from my own experience and what I've seen over time, um, queer people have had to hide. They've had to kind of shape shift. They've had to mask. They've had to, stay away from people. They've had to, stay alone. They maybe have struggled with finding opportunities for marriage or relationships. Um, so I think I really enjoy what I'm seeing, like with your project, because it's giving people a platform and an opportunity to really like come forward, and be vulnerable and open up and share with the world what it's like. We've had to keep our mouths shut for so long. It's nice to see that you're giving people that opportunity, because I think people are going to really learn from that and hopefully wake up and realize that there is still a lot of work that needs to be done to allow queer people to feel safe and embraced and celebrated.
Absolutely. And you're also working on a YouTube project, right?
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So I've been, it's been bouncing around in my head for a little bit. I've been researching, YouTube and other platforms really since COVID started. I just started kind of watching a bunch of videos about those things, and it's been a slow build, but I've been having experiences lately where the the focal point of my experiences have been me sharing my story. I've been in different support group situations. I knew that you were working on this and that we might do this too. And then the news article, the news interviews, and then so there's been a lot of experiences I've had where sharing my story has been the whole thing. And so it really got me thinking. I was like, well, I want to do something on YouTube. I just don't know what yet. And then finally, it's been a pattern with me where this happened with the Big City Safe Zone, this happened with Open Doors, and it kind of happened with the YouTube channel too, where I kept saying in my head or to myself or to others, like something needs to exist, and this is what I think that is, but I don't know who's going to do it or whatever. And so I finally realized that I thought that was another sign that I should probably try that. I've decided to create a YouTube channel called Ampliqueer, and I called it that because I kept looking for different variations of the idea of amplifying the voices of queer people or LGBTQ people. And everything I'd look up either already existed or was too wordy or whatever. And so then I started using some AI tools to give me some new variations and creative ideas. And so I went with Ampliqueer because, Ampli means amplify and then queer. So the slogan is from silence to sound, because the idea is many of us have had to live in the closet or had to live in silence for so long. Now it's time for us to come forward and speak up and share with the world what we have experienced and what it's like to be LGBTQ in all parts of the world, whether that's a big city or a small town, or we could even talk about it based on occupation, like if you're a teacher or a therapist, or if you're in the government or whatever, what it's truly like to be someone who identifies as queer in the world, because I think that's how, one, people who share will probably experience some healing from it. people who listen will hopefully get inspired by it. And then if they're not LGBTQ, but they're an ally or wanting to be an ally, then hopefully they'll at least learn something from it so they can learn how to better help people who identify as LGBTQ and help make the world a better place. Because some people just don't know until they hear a story or they hear some suggestions on what they could be doing. And then if they learn that, then they can go out there and they can actually take some steps to make things better. All of us are, um, small parts in this universe, but collectively, if we're all doing things together, then we can, create massive ways of change.
What is your hope for Appalachia, maybe 5 years from now, looking at the landscape of acceptance, I guess?
Well, my hope is that in Appalachia, the community, the larger community, realizes that, like you said earlier, we do have a lot more in common than they think, and that we really should be not only allowed to live there, but we should feel safe, we should feel celebrated, we should feel welcomed, we should be able to live our lives just like they've been able to, free from discrimination, free from having to feel unsafe all the time, free from threats, free from losing our job, the risk of losing our jobs or housing. Or so I hope that in Eastern Kentucky we will see that everyone is able to live together and celebrate one another, and to learn that really we're all trying to get through life together. And it is easier if we can get along and find some common ground. We may not have something in common with everybody, but at least we can find some common ground to understand that we're all human, we're all trying, we're all just wanting to be happy. And honestly, most of us just want to be left alone. I know that I personally want to be left alone most of the time.
Yeah.
So, like I just want to live my life and I don't want to have to live in fear every day or be unhappy. I want to be able to be happy and just do my thing,
Mhm.
you know?
So I know you obviously you had to leave or you chose to leave the region and you created your community. And would you have any words of encouragement to maybe a someone who is currently living here and they're in the situation that you were, where they're not ready, or they don't think they're ready to come out, or they're thinking maybe I have to leave to be me? Would you have any encouragement for them when you look at how the landscape has already changed?
Mhm. Well, first, I would say, you do you, boo. So if you need to leave, leave. But if you feel like you want to stay, then that's okay. And I would explain how things have changed and that if they wanted to stay, they could find community and that there are different groups in the area. There are people who are living very visibly as either an ally or as a queer person. I would encourage them to get connected with the community if they can, because I think that would really change their experience for the area. They would realize that everyone in Appalachia are not all the same people that they might be used to. That there are a lot of people there who are really open-minded, loving, accepting, more progressive, welcoming, and safe. Um, but at the time when I lived there, I did not the community was more isolated and more siloed at the time. Um, had I, if I did it over and I was living there today, I don't think I would move, because I would feel a sense of community. I would know that there are people there around to get connected with, to spend time with, to make friendships with. I've actually been thinking a lot about and reflecting on the differences in living in Lexington versus Eastern Kentucky. And there are a lot of parts of Eastern Kentucky that I do miss. Um, so it can be a really great area if you find the people that celebrate you and will surround you and, make you feel safe and loved and cared for, because they are there. That's what got me through the years that I lived there, was knowing that I did have people around me that wanted my best, had my best interest in mind, wanted the best for me. And they, even whenever I talked about moving, they didn't really want to see me go, but they understood why I wanted to and why I needed to. But if I could do it all over again, I think I would stay there a little bit longer, wait and see, and then I would have known that the community was forming and that it was going to thrive and that it was going to become. If I knew then what I know now, I would have stayed because I think that the community there is a really great community. Even though we all have probably had our own experience with pain, the way they have handled their pain has been very inspirational because it is to me, it's a very positive way of handling pain. They've been able to channel it into these great resources, and they've been able to help so many people because of it. And they're all about helping each other as a community.
If you or someone you know could benefit from the services at Open Doors Counseling, reach out to Kyle. You can find that information in the show notes. If you would like to share your story here on the podcast, reach out on Facebook at Queerly Quilted, Instagram at queerly.quilted, or email queerlyquiltedpodcast@gmail.com. And hopefully this episode can be a reminder that there is help out there, and there is hope out there, and maybe that can carry you through to another day. But until then, you are loved, you are needed, you are important, you are queerly quilted.